So hey, good morning, everybody. Jim, thanks for the warm welcome. It's truly a pleasure to be back to my alma mater. So I appreciate y'all inviting me to come and share a little perspective. Before we dig into the topic of the day that I'm quite passionate about, I will kind of comment that I've designed today's discussion to be somewhat interactive, but I'll need your help for this. So please make sure you have your smartphone handy. And if you haven't already navigated to the Wi-Fi, make sure you get logged into the Wi-Fi, because in just a minute, I'll ask you to do some interactive audience polling. So, augmented intelligence for program design. Why the heck is Ann so passionate about this? I need to manage your expectations. I am by no means an expert in the field of artificial intelligence or augmented intelligence. If anything, I'm quite the digital immigrant, so to speak, or digital tourist. So you may be thinking, well, what the heck? Why is she talking to us about artificial intelligence? I'm very, very passionate about it. As Jim mentioned, I do work in the defense space, retired from the Army after 26 years, and been with 2 different defense contractors for, I hate to count, almost 30 years between the 2 of them. And for the better part of my civilian career, I've had the pleasure or the displeasure, depending on your perspective, of having to navigate some very, very challenged programs. Programs that either didn't get started right, or got started and then stumbled and went bad real quick. And I'm not talking about your grandma or your grandpa's project that missed SPI by 0.01 or missed CPI by just a little bit. I'm talking about major defense acquisitions that miss budget by tens and hundreds of millions of dollars, enough to make you shake in your boots, or miss schedule by years. Jim knows, and a few of you who I remember from the last time I was here, I talked about one of my expat assignments where I was forward deployed to France in support of a very large, complex program for NATO. 8 years delinquent to contract, 300 million euro over budget. You don't dig out of that kind of hole overnight. And so for many years, I've gotten bloody knuckles from trying to help program teams resurrect these very troubled programs. And in later years, I've spent a lot of time, both during my day job and academically, digging in to understand the root causes. Card-carrying Six Sigma black belt, for any of those of you in the room, you know some of that language, another hua. And really trying to diagnose and understand, why are these programs running off the rails? And you'll hear some interesting and sobering statistics in a minute that it's not only in the defense space. And so a number of years ago, I became fascinated by this whole evolving world of artificial intelligence. We've heard a lot about AI in the last, 4, 6, 8, 10 months, but it's not new, been around a long time. And one of the things that has inspired me or caused me to kind of scratch my head is in the defense space, we spend a lot of time and money leveraging artificial intelligence modalities to design our products. We build a lot of cool things that keep men and women in uniform out of harm's way, or when they're in harm's way, keep them safe. And we use machine learning and neural networks and sensor fusion to design the decision assist for those products. And yet, at least in the 2 defense companies that I can speak to authoritatively, we haven't done as much to leverage the AI to design our project or our program. And I wonder why. So today I'd like to share with you a little perspective about kind of an analog version of what some of my portfolio teams are doing to try to help remedy what I call program design. And then I want to challenge all of us as a community of practitioners, what's in the art of the possible in terms of leveraging all this cool AI capability to partner with a human in the loop to turn it into augmented intelligence to help our programs do better. So before I continue, as I mentioned, I've designed today to be somewhat interactive. We'll do a little test poll in a second. So if you can grab your smartphones, what I'd like you to do is navigate a browser to a website called menti.com. menti.com. And I know the font is a little bit tiny at the top of the screen, but if you could punch in the code 82603633, you'll see a little poll question come up. Now, this is just a silly question, just so you can get comfortable with the interactive polling, but my question for you is, why are you here today? Is it for the snacks, or is it for the PMI PDUs? Or you just want to hear the old Army chick talk? I didn't put that on the poll, so you only have two choices. So I guess I need to start the poll so you can actually interact. All right, now you should be able to see it, and you should be able to pick your choice. And as you answer, if this works, we'll see your responses on the screen. So some of you are the honest engines in the room, and you are clearly here for the snacks. So I applaud your integrity. Looks like a lot of us are here for the PDUs. So hats off to the UTD team. The snacks are pretty good. Okay, it looks like, I have to squint, looks like we have about 131 people answered, so thanks for playing along. As I continue in the conversation, I'll prompt you for a few more polls, and I'm really interested in your perspective. Again, this is it's a topic of personal and professional interest for me, so anytime I get a chance to talk to folks about it, I'm curious as to what you think. So, still answering, feel free to answer, and we'll capture screenshots of all the results when we finish today. Okay, so I mentioned a minute ago that it's been distressing to me over the better part of my civilian career just how many of these major defense acquisition programs run off the rails. You see a statistic at the top of the screen, actually from a Harvard Business Review article published in February, that indicates what the worldwide spend is on projects, not exclusive to defense, all types of projects. So, big bucks, all of us and our stakeholders are spending all over the world to get projects run. And yet, only 35% of them are deemed to be successful. 35%. That's a lot of waste. Why aren't the rest of those successful? And the article is very interesting. I think one of my colleagues that's going to speak later today, Anish, also references this article. And there's some indications as to, maybe if we had better access to certain technologies, we could all do better. But bringing it a little bit closer to home to my area of influence and expertise within DoD programs, the second statistic you see, GAO report, Government Accounting Office, Accounting Office, a report from 2020 that did a little deep dive root cause analysis on why are these major defense acquisitions failing? And what they found is one of the chief causal factors for these performance erosion occurrences, like big time, not $1, $5, tens and hundreds of millions of dollars. And it's not just about the dollars. I don't know, any of you in the audience, veterans, wearers of the uniform? Thank you for your service. Have sons, daughters, aunts, uncles, brothers, sisters, right? Touches all of us. So it's not just about the spend or the waste on these acquisition programs. It's about when those of us who do wear the uniform have to go downrange to keep all of us safe. We need to make sure we've got the right toys with us to defend ourselves and our brothers and sisters in arms, right? So this is very personal and visceral for me. Why are these major defense acquisitions stumbling? GAO concluded that one of the reasons is because there's a knowledge deficit when we're making decisions about which programs to bid and how we structure those programs, right? So knowledge deficit to support decision making, hold that thought. And then academic who wrote a book called Risk and Rationality that talks about bias and the cognition of decision making. And this gentleman asserts, all of us have bias, admittedly. When we come to the table to make a decision, whether it's the family decision to go out to dinner or a defense acquisition decision, we all come with kind of, our own pedigree, our own baggage. And so the notion that we're making big time decisions on these major defense acquisitions, and yet those decisions may either be biased or be made in the absence of absolute or good enough information, makes me scratch my head. And so for the last couple of years, as Jim alluded, I have been doing some academic research into this area of, well, what do program leaders think about augmented intelligence? And how would they feel about using one of the AI capabilities to help on their programs? So that's what we're going to talk a little bit more about today. Before we continue, I want to make sure we'll level set on some definitions. In my opening remarks, I admitted I am not a digital native. I am not an expert in AI. I'm just a tired old program manager that's had bloody knuckles from trying to rescue challenged programs and trying to figure out how do we do it better. And so an author, oh gosh, almost 20 years ago, I think this was 2001, coined these two terms to kind of distinguish those amongst us who have grown up in the digital age, right? And it's seamless to you to have one or multiple devices that you're connected to at all times or many times, as opposed to those of us, I'm showing my age now, but I'm admittedly the gray-haired lady, who came up and, you know, when I was in undergraduate school, we were still on mainframes. Any of you know what punch cards are? Any of you get in trouble running across campus and you dropped your stack? At a break, I'll explain, for those who don't understand the significance of that, I'll explain what that means, right? Anyway, this isn't to say digital immigrants are better or worse than digital natives. It's just to acknowledge we're all in this together, but we may be coming at solution space from a different perspective. So, time for another poll. I'm really interested how many in the audience consider themselves digital natives versus digital immigrants, or, like I find myself often, just digitally disturbed. So you either agree or disagree, or you can put that little slider anywhere in that spectrum that you like. So it looks like we have more digital natives right now than digital immigrants. Some of us are digitally disturbed. I applaud whoever answered digitally disturbed. The fact that you even navigated into my little interactive online poll gives me great hope for the future. So a few more. Looks like we've got about 135 of you. Feel free to continue to answer as I go to the next screen. So, oh, that's kind of interesting. We're almost split between natives and immigrants. So that's kind of cool. All right, a few more level setting, not so much definitions, but maybe some terms or perspectives. When we talk about artificial intelligence, I think there might be a few AI experts in the room today, and you're going to hear from some of them in some of the next breakout sessions. It's a little difficult to find an authoritative definition for what is artificial intelligence. Instead, what I thought I'd do is offer to the audience, here are some of the capabilities or the modalities that we often see AI-type solutions helping us in, whether it's in product development or process improvement or decision assist. Some, maybe not all, but some AI modalities can help us with sense making, with reasoning. We'll get into a little bit some very practical examples that probably touch our lives on an everyday basis. So when we talk about AI capabilities, it's not just one single modality. It's not just machine learning or algorithms or natural language processing. There are a variety of modalities that, when taken in context, can help us solve a lot of our problems, you know, on a daily basis. The next definition that I'd like to share with you is augmented intelligence. And fundamentally, this is where we take the human with the human's cognition and autonomy and keep the human in the loop, partnered with artificial intelligence modalities to do things better or do things faster. Another reference from an author, 2018, he says it's the interactive relationship between humans and smart systems. So for those who get a little bit flustered or antsy because we're worried that the AI machine is going to be Terminator-like and, you know, take over the universe, heck, I don't know. It might. Who knows? But for today, the reason I'm passionate about exploring this, you know, what's in the art of the possible is marrying together the speed and the computing capability and the predictive analytics that AI modalities can bring to us, and marry them with that human that has reasoning, common sense, autonomy, and admittedly bias, putting those two things together to see if we can't do our project management craft better. So that kind of helps level set us. Another interesting article that I found, something called the AI 100 study, was chartered by some researchers out of Microsoft. I think the year was 2016. And the idea was they wanted to kind of polish their crystal ball and look into the future and see what was AI going to do for our society over the next 100 years. And their intent was to drop incremental reports as they kind of did this analysis. And their first report looked at AI evolution over a 15-year period. So they were targeting what would AI do for our society by the year 2030. And they profiled these 8 sectors or aspects of our lives. It's a very interesting read. By the way, I should mention, I've tried to include all the resources or links either on the chart or in the speaker notes, and I'm told you'll get access to all the charts. So if you're kind of a nerdy one like me and you like to read these things. But it's very interesting what this body of knowledge has surmised will be the changes in transportation, in our home life, in the service industry, in education, all the different places where not merely ChatGPT invading us or students using ChatGPT to write their papers. Don't be doing that. You want to exercise your mind, right? But do compare and contrast. What does the machine think, right? But keep the human in the loop so that ultimately the decision is the humans, right? But a fascinating number of aspects that you may agree with or disagree with, but the researchers are indicating it's not just nirvana and something that's going to happen out there. The changes are upon us right now. So now we kind of turn inwardly to our project management profession and our craft. What do we think? What do you think? How do you think AI will transform, or maybe already has transformed, the world of project management? So get those smartphones ready, because it's not testable, but I seriously am curious for your perspective. This one will not be multiple choice. You get to write in whatever you would care to write in. So how do you think AI is going to transform project management? It's going to help us status our IMS better. It's going to help us go faster. I don't want to put words in your mouth. Answer anything you would like. Jobs? Say again? Better analysis. Do you mind writing it in for me so we can grab it? It's going to build a nice, pretty picture for us. And then we can share that picture with everybody who's in attendance. Skynet. Providing data quicker. This is where I always get a little bit of vertigo, so bear with me. I don't want to fall off the stage while I watch the word cloud build. Analysis, scheduling, speed. For those who are not aware, with these interactive word clouds, the larger the font translates to the higher frequency. More of you said analysis, speed, and scheduling than said something that's in a teeny tiny font that I read. Documentation, metrics, risk, maybe I should read it over here. Risk management, accuracy, better data analytics, lots of data analytics up there. Cool. So it looks like I don't have to have a hard sell to this audience. You guys already see the art of the possible, at least theoretically. And maybe practically. Maybe some of you are already using these capabilities. And we'll get to that next. Feel free to continue to answer until I launch the next poll. But we'll move on to kind of the little next tidbit of information. That February 2023 article that I mentioned that said 35% of programs globally are successful, written by a gentleman who's quite published, it seems, in the project management space. Excuse me for any native Latinos if I mispronounce his name, Antonio Nieto Rodriguez. Do any of you guys follow him on LinkedIn or PMI? He's written a lot. You do? Yeah. So February 2023 article, and he and his co-author, they've been kind of analyzing this space and pulsing, and they articulated these 6 areas where they feel artificial intelligence, not exclusively the augmented aspect, is going to have the most impact to our project management teams. And some of these might be obvious, and some of them you may or may not have thought about yet. Starting from the top, one I particularly like, the language we use globally in the PMI community is project selection. So better project selection and prioritization. In the DoD acquisition community, we usually use the language, bid, no bid. Which customer problems are we going to attempt to solve? And when the government issues an RFP, are we going to answer it, bid it, or are we going to not answer it, no bid it? So Antonio and his co-author asserted that the computational power of AI and the differential statistics and analytics might be really, really powerful to help us select which projects we go after and how to prioritize the ones that we do. Again, stripping out that bias, but speeding up some of the computations. Certainly support for the PMO. How many of you as project managers have had to bust your knuckles doing, what I call swivel chair analytics, taking transactional data out of one system. I turn my chair around, pound it into PowerPoint, take it out of it. Yeah, somebody's resonating up there. And so, wow, what if you had like a personal assistant? You see that at number 4. Not just a minion PM, right? But an engine, a helper, an automated helper to, help with variance analysis or scan your IMS and look for deltas or, any number of things in terms of supporting the PMO. Number 3, faster project definition. We're going to unpack this notion of planning, and I'll introduce to you at least Anne's definition for program design. And one that I'm really excited about, this notion of advanced testing systems. And, in the defense space, we've, for quite some time, leveraged machine learning and machine-generated code and those kind of things. But automated testing is another area where AI can really help our projects to go faster and do better. And then one that some people may be uncomfortable with, and that is the evolving role of the project manager in this AI-enabled world, right? How are our jobs going to change? This same article indicated, there was a quote from Gartner, who is also focused out at 2030, right? What's life going to look like in 2030? And Gartner asserted that by 2030, 80% of what we know today as transactional program office tasks will be shifted over to the AI. So think about how much time we as PMs spend doing transactional work versus strategic work, right? And so it doesn't mean the PM goes away and that we turn life over to the machine. It means the PM can kind of adjust his or her focus to those things that are more strategic in nature. So now I'll introduce to you Anne's definition for program design. And to all my PMI colleagues, I apologize. This is not in the PMBOK. This is my crazy idea as I'm trying to excuse the unladylike expression, unscrew all these programs that are just so distressed. So my definition of program design is the comprehensive set of decisions that we make throughout the life cycle of a project or a program to architect them for success or to architect them for executability. You could argue that this equals planning. And the reason, at least in my current business space, we've chosen not to brand this as planning is there's a lot in our community, at least in my defense community, that equate planning with an IMS. And certainly an IMS is an artifact that we use as we do project planning, but it's not the only thing, right? So that's why this notion of program design is a bit more comprehensive. And for me, we crafted this canvas to include what we call solutions, structures, elements, and baselines. And it rests on a bedrock that I call ROAD, R-O-A-D. And I'll unpack that for you now. So this is analog. Don't get too excited. I haven't created, I'll show you my vision for a PM version of an AI engine, but this is just analog. But the idea is when I have teams that get all lathered up because the Department of Defense just released their POM, or they just dropped an RFP that says, you know, there's a $2 billion opportunity to create a new data link to put on surface warfare ships, and we want to go after it. And I say, okay, talk to me. Tell me what your technical approach is. How are we going to solve the Navy's problem for data link solutions? Tell me what your programmatic approach is. I don't need any chartware. I don't need anything fancy. Just articulate the decisions you have made, program manager and team, for how we're going to satisfy the customer's mission. And then once we get at least verbal alignment on the technical solution, the programmatic solution, are we going to team with Boeing or not? Are we going to team with Ball or not? Are there any strategic sourcing implications? Then we can start getting into brass tacks about what's the product breakdown structure? How deep does my work breakdown structure need to go? My OBS, et cetera, et cetera. And so I'm sure many of these are familiar to you. Some might be unique to defense. We tend to do a lot of business internationally. There are special laws when you want to sell defense articles overseas. So we have all different kind of rules in that regard. But the idea is these are all decisions we organically make in the life of a project or a program. The challenge is if we don't make the decision at the right time to influence that integrated baseline before we snap it, we will have performance erosion. Which is why the notion of the program design canvas sits on this bedrock that I call with my own program teams road to green. You want to be green with your program? Listen to me, use the program design canvas, and get very, very disciplined, not just about your R's and your O's, your risks and your opportunities, but very, very disciplined about your assumptions and your dependencies. So this is what I mean by program design canvas. And the challenge is, how many in the audience, just show of hands, are managing their very first project, first profit and loss project? Anybody? A couple of people. And I know we have some emerging program managers here. Do you mind if I focus on you for a moment? Would that make you uncomfortable? Okay. I already made them uncomfortable by asking them the question. Welcome to the corporate world, my friends. So imagine I just hire you. Tomorrow, you're going to be my PMs for the new Navy tactical data link for surface warfare ships. And you're like, great, I got a job. She's going to pay me a big fat salary. And I say, okay, great. We have to architect this program for success because I'm not writing off another $36 million, okay? And now you're shaking in your boots. And you say, okay, she showed us that canvas. We got to figure this out. You're brand new in the company. Who do you go to ask questions beside the old gray-haired Army chick? Find a chief engineer, you find somebody that's done it before, you find a retired Navy guy. But wouldn't it be cool Do you guys use Siri on your phone to get around? GPS? Me too. Wouldn't it be cool if you had a Siri for your program management planning, for your program management office? Wouldn't it be cool if we had an engine, just like we use Siri for GPS, or we use Alexa, turn on the lights. Alexa, give me some mood music. I don't have an Alexa, but I hear it on the... My nephew was just telling me, I visited with my nephew and his little 3-year-old, and the 3-year-old knows to tell Google, turn the bedtime alarm off. The 3-year-old is a digital native, clearly. The 3-year-old knows that Google sounds the alarm when the child has a 10-minute warning before it's time to get in bed. So the child is trying to trick it. No, Google, reset the alarm. 10 more minutes, Google. The 3-year-old can do that for bedtime. Why can't we do that for our program teams? So in Ann's Nirvana, I hope nobody steals my idea. Or if you like my idea, when I win the lottery, or maybe we can partner and we'll get some angel investing and we'll build this engine. Maybe some of your companies have already done this. But in Ann's Nirvana, when we have less experienced program managers who want to learn fast and are not afraid of leveraging the technology, or when we have crusty old program managers who are just so tired of another red program that maybe I've copped bias in the other direction. Maybe I no longer can see straight because I'm weighed down by, some difficult experiences. How cool would it be to have a somewhat independent arbiter that could harvest all the data and give, rapid computational predictive analytics? How cool would that be? So now think about the program design canvas, right? In light of, I'm not sure what a control account architecture is. Maybe I should ask Pammy, my program management augmented intelligent assistance, right? Hey, Pammy, what should I do about my WBS? Is 3 levels down in my WBS satisfactory, or do I need to have 7 legs? How much is enough? How much is too much? Hey, Pammy, what should I do about make-buy? Go find for me everywhere we have built a circuit card of this geometry, of this nature, double-sided surface mount with these kind of, power devices. Go find where we've decided to do that in-house versus out of the house, and where have we had the best results. So rather than you as a human having to pick up the phone and call 73 of your best friends who may or may not want to open Kimono and share with you, our program failed because we sent our circuit cards to XYZ. They may or may not want to tell you that. They may or may not be with the company anymore. But how cool would it be if you could ask Pammy all these questions so that these 2 young men who are our brand new project managers, we're going to set them up for success. We want to make sure you don't have to fly solo, and you can take advantage of the body of knowledge across your whole company, assuming Pammy is real, of course, right? And that Pammy has accessed the body of knowledge in not only that we've trained her in project management protocols, but that Pammy has access to hygienic and well-positioned data for your industry space, right? And then she could be your battle buddy to do all that computation. Instead of you calling 73 other people that use that circuit card manufacturer, Pammy could go out and grab that data and present to you kind of a differential diagnosis, right? A range of outcomes to say, well, you could do this and your probability of success would be that, or you could keep it in-house and your probability of success would do this. Either way, the human is still in the loop. What do you think? Crazy, right? So, if you don't believe me, believe some of the other authors that are out there. Here's another interesting book, Paul Boudreau, 2019. Again, this hasn't just evolved in the last 6 months since ChatGPT got all sexy and Bard is growing legs and all of that. But there's a number of researchers and authors that have been surmising that AI is here. It's in use in our everyday lives. It can be applied to our project management craft in a number of ways to either help us go faster or de-risk the decisions that we're making. And so Paul identifies some of these. You've seen the term virtual assistant. Sorry, I've been favoring that side of the room. Here, let me wander over here. So Paul argues not just virtual assistants, but what about change control? How many times do we as project managers find out that somebody on our team has accepted out-of-scope change? We're the last ones to know about it. Oh, I hate when that happens, right? And then I gotta walk it back. I gotta go to the customer. I gotta figure out how to make a trade so I don't have to have a write-off. Not cool, right? But what if we could have an early warning radar on our project team with sensors that could detect, if we're coding a requirement that doesn't exist yet, maybe we shouldn't be doing that, at least not without having a handshake. So anyway, Paul asserts change control, stakeholder management. What if Pammy could alert you 5 days before some kind of periodic cadence when you should be going to talk to one of your particular stakeholders? And oftentimes, if you don't already have a very specific cadence set, at least for me, there's over 1,000 contracts in my current portfolio. Lots and lots of stakeholders, right? I can't possibly remember everything. And I have a large team, but instrumenting all of those details, especially when there's a pop-up requirement and we have to change our schedule on the fly, having an assistant to say, tisk, tisk, you said you were going to go meet Admiral so-and-so the middle of the month, you better do that. How cool would that be, right? Stakeholder management, predictive analytics, resolving issues effectively. Lots of art of the possible here. Whoop. So looks like we, let me try that again. I think we must have gone ahead. That's okay. So the next question I wanted to ask was, how likely are you or your project management team to embrace augmented intelligence in the next 12 months? So it looks like some people may have already answered, which is cool. Go ahead and take a minute. We're already using AI in our team. We're starting to design some solution space. No way, we're digital immigrants. We don't want any of that stinking AI stuff. We're curious but slow to adopt. Or like me, woohoo, I'm all in. I just want my scary smart AI and IT buddies to help me design some engines. Sounds like most of us, even though, remember back at a previous poll, our audience was about half split, digital native, digital immigrant, right? I don't know about the rest of you digital immigrants, but for me, I feel like I'm kind of closer to that midline. Like I like to make friends with my digital native counterparts so I can learn from them, right? So even though we might be immigrants or tourists or still trying to learn all this digital transformation stuff, looks like most of us are very, very curious about what's in the art of the possible. That's good. Do you remember our speaker yesterday who said something about curiosity is the seed for innovation, right? If we're not curious about problem solving, how can we ever craft a new solution? So, not that my charter is to make disciples out of all of us, but I do feel that it's kind of interesting to, as we pause and reflect and think about what's in the art of the possible for our own practitioner community, for our own craft, it's kind of interesting to stay abreast of what are the other boys and girls doing, right? Any ag people in the room? Come from ag families? None? Some that want to admit it. I don't technically come from it. Actually, a generation or so ago, there were rice farmers in my family, and I have a dear friend that just retired out of ag finance and now farms about 500 acres in the Delta. But this is a picture from southern Louisiana. I live in New Orleans. You might have picked that up from my tone of voice. So this is just a pretty picture of rice harvest. But I found this interesting article with just really compelling statistics. Cool stuff happening in the ag community in terms of decision assist. Some of the generational farmers are getting out of farming, and there's this whole crop of new emerging young talent farmers. And just like our emerging project managers, they're anxious to learn. They want to do a great job. They just might not have as much experience as those of us who are old and tired. But in the ag community, they're doing cool stuff with AI for predictive crop rotations, predictive analytics on fertilizers and soil stabilizers and things I don't really know about, AI-assisted cultivating. But the things, which I think is all fascinating, it's just all cool, and it helps us, helps the farmer be more productive and profitable. The thing that I thought was just staggering, look at that CAGR number. The analysts are saying there's 23% combined annual growth for the next 5-year period in AI-related products and services to the ag community, right? So if you're not a believer in the power of AI to enable our own practice, start thinking about it from a business perspective in terms of, profitability for that sector. It's kind of interesting. Another sector that I'm passionate about because of my military background, I served in the Medical Service Corps in the Army for 26 years. I am not a clinician, but my area of focus or specialty was in healthcare management, primarily tactical, far-forward medicine. And I'm the daughter of 2 medical practitioners, so I'm fascinated by all things medicine. This is an article about the top 10 ways primary care providers are leveraging AI. So you all may or may not know it. I mean, I don't know, do we have any healthcare practitioners here? Physicians, nurses, primary care providers, et cetera. My understanding is in the healthcare field, they've been leveraging AI for years, right? Not just things like telemedicine, but formulary decision assist for differential diagnoses. Not only for the primary care provider to do their craft better and faster, but also from the patient perspective. How many of you have gone to a website and you've punched in some symptoms and the website says, oh, it might be this or this or this, and you might want to go talk to your provider, right? There's some, machine learning and some inferential analysis there kind of pointing you, the human, are still in the loop, right? But the machine is helping us to kind of narrow our frame of reference. We saw this, all of us saw this during the pandemic, right? Health population calculations and trending and predictive analytics to figure out when the next outbreak is going to be, where it's going to be, and what the severity is. There wasn't a crystal ball. They were triangulating over a lot of data and using some machines to help with those computations. So cool stuff. And one more example that I find interesting, sometimes frustrating when I'm not being a very good driver. Anybody not have a car less than 5 years old or not rented a car in the last few years? Pretty much all the newer cars have some amount of advanced driver assistance already programmed into the vehicle. The one that usually gets me is when I'm being a lazy old driver and I don't put my turn signal on and the steering wheel goes like this. That never happens to the rest of you, right? I'm the only bad driver in the universe. I'm not a bad driver, I'm just lazy, right? And that thing wakes you up. Or you have the cruise control on and you're approaching the vehicle in front of you at a greater speed than the vehicle in front of you is progressing. And what happens? The car kicks the cruise control off and it slows you down, right? That is nothing more than an augmented intelligence feature keeping the human in the loop. I'm the driver. I can ignore that feature. I can turn it off. I can speed to my death if I want. The human is still in the loop. But the machine is trying to help us from doing dumb, right? And LiDAR and sonar technology, the stuff we put on the F-35 is, on your Toyota and on your Lexi, and, it's pretty cool, right? So here's my question for the program management community. If we're comfortable letting the AI help us make better driving decisions and driving choices, then what's stopping us from having the AI help us make better program planning or program architecting choices? If we're okay to have it help us keep in the lines when we're driving down 75, then why wouldn't we have it help us make sure we don't do dumb by having a non-functional WBS, or by having way too many control accounts than we can possibly status in an efficient and effective manner? Why wouldn't we leverage the AI to help us stay in between the lines? So that's my challenge for all of us. And now I want to know. I'll launch the poll, and my curiosity is, how would you feel if you had a Pammy in your business space? Hey, Pammy, tell me what my program design decisions should be. Tell me what my WBS should look like given this product breakdown structure for this kind of technology. How would you feel about that? Or how would you feel if you've already architected your project and you're ready to go to the boss or the stakeholders for authorization to proceed, and I got my canvas, and I got all my decisions, and I got my road to green, and everything's laying flat. And before you take it to the stakeholders for authorization to proceed, how would you feel if Pammy looked it over for you? And Pammy gave you some feedback that said, based on all of the similar programs in the universe of the big data that we have, either in your company or across your industry, your probability of success is X. Would you like that or not like that? Looks like most of us would like that, which gives me great hope and optimism. As I mentioned, and Jim fronted me out, I am doing some doctoral research in this space, and I've interviewed many program leaders, some who are traditional program managers, some who are chief engineers, IT leaders, manufacturing operations leaders, and fascinatingly, not all of them have a profile of this kind of acceptance. Some of them are like, take that stuff away. We don't trust it. We don't understand the algorithms, right? Others are quite anxious. Give me the range of outcomes. Let me make the choice, but give me the range of outcomes to make sure that I'm not missing something. So really interesting feedback. So I think this is our last poll. My next question is, in your space, in your industry, in your program teams, what's keeping you from leveraging AI? What's holding you back? Is it funding? Is it fear? Is it we don't have the engine, we're waiting for Ann to design Pammy and deliver Pammy to us? What's holding you back? Oops, I guess I need to launch it before you can answer. My bad. Okay, now it should be free for you. So funding, leadership commitment, lots of funding. Lack of imagination, that's a good one. Send those imagination people to me. I'll introduce them to my new friend Pammy, and we'll see if we can't, get the Imagineering going. No tool available. Let me see how I scroll this. So 83 of you, funding, expense, lots of funding, AI availability, culture, funding, novelty. People don't like change. That's a good one. We had several breakout sessions yesterday that talked to different aspects of change management. And so I think that's a big one, at least both in my day job and in the academic research I'm doing. There's a huge element, I think, of change leadership here. It's not that people don't acknowledge it's possible, but that whole change journey needs to be nuanced. Whoops. Okay, I broke it now. Stand by one. There we go. All right, so we kind of get the public opinion. That's interesting. I don't know the genesis of whoever put this one, but I'm guessing it has to do with there's lots of concerns in the community, and we see multiple articles each day that talk to concerns about ethics. Is the information going to be used appropriately or inappropriately? Is the information truthful? Can it be relied upon? And then the whole notion of the Terminator, the robots are going to take over the world. So I do think that there's, as part of the change journey, there's an element of public opinion that needs to be reckoned with. So great, we'll look at a couple of more. It looks like funding was probably the predominant response. Source of data, that's a big one for me in my company. We have a ton of data across BAE systems, right? But instrumenting that data in a hygienic manner, architecting the data models so that the AI engine can go grab it, it's a tactical concern, and it's very fixable. We just have to commit the resources to go do it. All right. Well, that was fun. It was fun for me. I hope it was fun for you. Before we wrap up, just a couple of other pointers and then one story, and I'll open it up for questions. Again, this time has been very, very enriching for me. I hope for you also. But again, if you don't believe Anne's crazy innovation of Program Design Canvas and my new AI assistant I call Pammy, at least in my mind she exists, there's a number of authors that really are focusing on both research and practical application of augmenting decision-making with the capabilities and modalities that artificial intelligence brings us, with the encouragement that we do it in a way where we keep the human in the loop, thus augmented intelligence. So my final story, and I hope I do justice to this, are there any chess players, chess aficionados in the audience? Some. You might tell the story better than me then. I think I saw a couple up there. So for those who weren't born then, or who may remember, back in 1996, the world had a grand chess master named Garry Kasparov. And he was very, very well known all over the world for being this brilliant mind that always beat all of his opponents in chess. In 1996, he was, say again? I thought somebody said something. In 1996, he challenged or was challenged to have a match with an IBM computer called, I think it was called Deep Blue. And so instead of sitting across from a human opponent, he was sitting across from the machine. And Garry beat the machine. And the world said, whew, at least from what I remember and what I read about it. However, Garry was challenged to a rematch by Deep Blue. He was actually challenged to a rematch by the scientists who programmed Deep Blue. They said, hey, we want another shot at that. So the very next year, in 1997, Kasparov went toe-to-toe with Deep Blue, and guess what happened? He lost. The machine beat this brilliant mind and the global world grand poobah champion of chess. Wow. And the world stood still, at least for a second. You remember it, I guess. Yep. And it was so, I can't speak for Kasparov, but from my reading, it was so disturbing / compelling to Garry that he got beat by the machine. Instead of knocking the table over or going home mad and taking his rook and his queen and his king and saying, I'm not going to play chess again. Instead, he started to do some research. And he started to do some experiments to see, how can a machine help me when I'm playing chess? How can it help me count my moves? How can it help me predict what the other guy's going to do, et cetera, et cetera. So instead of going home mad, he started studying. And the very next year, in 1998, he went toe-to-toe with a Bulgarian opponent in Leon, Spain, But this time, both Kasparov and the Bulgarian opponent were aided by a computer each. So Kasparov had his machine, the Bulgarian guy had his machine. Guess what happened? It was a draw. Neither of them won, neither of them lost. And you could say, so what, Anne? What does that have to do with program design and augmented intelligence? It's very, very interesting because it brings home a point about how we run our projects. I don't know about you, but I am real tired of being in the corporate space where people say, I have to have the entire A-team. This project is so important, we're going to put the A-team on it. What is that? That is so disrespectful, right? Well, what if you're the B team? What if you're the C team? What if you're the future of project management sitting right here in the front row, right? You don't need the A team. You need the right team. And you need the right complement of skills, knowledge, abilities, resources, attitudes, emotional intelligence, etc. So that's why I found this very, very interesting. So Kasparov, after he went toe-to-toe with the Bulgarian dude and it was a draw, he went on to do some actual academic research in this space. And this article is co-authored by him and another gentleman. And what they concluded is, I hate this term weak human. I also think that's disrespectful. Let's put it in project management terms. Let's say a less experienced PM plus a machine that's been trained in this space. You can't take a machine trained in project management and put them in the chess match, right? The machine has to be trained for whatever the infrastructure space is, right? But what Garry concluded from his research is you take an inexperienced human and you put it with the right machine and a robust set of practices and processes, and you will get a better outcome. And that's what he determined from his chess journey, right? Because remember when the machine was aiding the human, and at the time, I'm not a chess expert, but I remember reading about it and watching it on TV when it occurred. There was no brighter mind than Kasparov, right? And so to think even with Kasparov and the machine, the two of them couldn't beat the other guy with the machine. It's kind of interesting, right? So not really a moral to this story, but I thought it was very, very insightful. As we think about one of his concluding points in this article was, it's not about the hero human. It's about having the right skill sets, whether it's human skills or the machine augmented skills, and the right practices. That's how we achieve success. So I'll leave it there, and I'll say, Jim, and on behalf of Dean Barden, who I know had a meeting, and of course our friends from PMI, the whole UTD team, and PM Global Journal. Thank you for having me back. I hope I haven't wasted your time. I think we have a few minutes that we can entertain questions. I'd be happy to answer any.
First, I just want to say thank you for sharing your knowledge and expertise. I have a question. You make Pammy sound very attractive and could be very useful and helpful, but with cybersecurity hacking running rampant, how would you tell Pammy or keep Pammy from the cybersecurity risk and getting hacked, especially when it comes to defense program?
Yeah, so that's a very, very good question. And quite frankly, I think this is one of the chief causal factors for why at least my company hasn't made more progress in this space. For those who are not aware, you know, in the defense acquisition community, we have a lot of rules and regulations to keep things safe and to make sure the bad guys don't get our technology. We've been on it in my division, my space. We've been on a 3-year journey just to get project server on a cloud server, and we've still been stalled because of defense limitations. So it is a very, very real concern. I think Pammy or something like her could still be very, very, it's not just a wild wish. It can happen. It has started to happen in some other companies that I've studied. I think in the defense space, it's all about what data the engine has access to, and is that data in a sufficiently controlled environment? And is the data segmented from any what we call CUI or classified? In the Defense Department, there's a difference between classified information, you hear on the news, secret, top secret, et cetera, and classified but unclassified but under control. But if the engine can reach out and not worry about accessing, let's say, target acquisition algorithms, which might be classified, but if they could access programmatic information, cycle times for software productivity and that sort of thing. So if we can architect the data model so that the data is segmented and protected so that we have a division of church and state between special classification information versus other, I think that's one of the ways at least some people that I'm in discussion with are managed. Really good question. There was one up here and then the gentleman in the back. Sir?
Yeah, I'm just curious on your thoughts around sort of IP or your thoughts around IP or copyright infringement on any of the data that a lot of these LLMs are being trained on, so that you're starting to profit, or Microsoft starting to profit, whoever is using and taking that information.
Yeah. So I'm certainly not an IP attorney, won't claim to be. What I will say is I work very, very closely with the attorneys in my company. That there's a reason that I can only speak theoretically about certain things, because there are a number of my competitors that are doing similar things as what we're doing at BAE, and it's very much a competitive landscape. And so there are concerns about copyright infringement and protection of intellectual property. As far as what Microsoft is doing and some of the other engines, I think that's probably gonna, we talked a minute ago about the role of the PM may change. And I think somebody during one of the polls said, there may be new jobs that come out of the AI evolution. I think one of the new jobs is going to be for a whole crop of IP attorneys, quite frankly. Because even though it's fascinating and lucrative to think, wow, all this data exists in our universe, why don't we just go machine the data? But we kind of have to ask ourselves, who has a right to the data? And I think that's kind of like one of the next frontiers that we're going to have to tackle.
Yep.
Let me go see if there's questions over here.
You talked about databases to train. Most corporate databases that I'm familiar with were not designed for AI. So do you see the existing corporate databases are going to have to evolve as the database?
Yes and no, and I'll answer it this way. Any data scientists in the room before I stick my cowgirl boot in my mouth? Okay, I am not a data scientist, but I work very, very closely with some. They tell me what the cool thing is to do nowadays is not redesign the disparate databases, but to properly architect a data model with a data hub. So we don't have to go take this one from TI, DSEG, and this one from semiconductor. They don't look the same, but we don't care. As long as we can properly architect a data model with a data hub that then reaches to the disparate databases, as long as we can condition at the data item level, we don't care how the database is constructed. At least that's what the smart guys in my company have been, teaching me about. So that's how we kind of, move ourselves forward. Other questions? Yes.
Not so much a question, but we don't get a lot of aha moments. And what is it? The program design canvas is brilliant.
Thanks.
And
could you tell my boss that?
Yeah. And if you're not careful and PMI isn't careful, this will ultimately supplant PMBOK.
Oh, I wouldn't say that. I would say maybe we'll talk to the PMI folks. Maybe it could be an attachment to the PMBOK or an evolution to the PMBOK. But seriously, thank you for that. I don't know that I would call it brilliant. Maybe I would. But seriously, it has literally been born out of blood, sweat, and tears and years of, why didn't we make that decision sooner? Or why didn't we make that decision better? Or the old, what were we thinking when we made that decision? Or we let the wrong person make the decision, right? We let the capture manager, who's going to get a big fat bonus when we win the contract, he or she made those decisions, and the poor PM that's got to go execute the job didn't get invited to the party. Well, that's not polite, right? So thank you very much for your kind remarks. I appreciate it. Yes, ma'am.
This was awesome, and it really
Thanks.
opened my mind up to the possibilities better than I thought before. But one of the things that really occurred to me was when you were talking, the lessons learned event that happens at the end of projects is something that many companies have struggled with losing at the end of the project. And the idea that lessons learned could be captured and available to you, just that piece by itself is worth
Powerful.
its weight in platinum.
Yeah, I agree with you, Susan. And there's one anecdote I neglected to mention on one of the slides. I got coached by a mentor many years ago in one of those very difficult gate reviews. And this person told me, you know, Ann, I have never seen a program fail for something new. Now, keep in mind, this was at the CEO of Raytheon level. You know, we were in the boardroom and we were getting yelled at because something ran off the rails. And he was having a mentoring moment with all his senior staff. And he said, I've never seen a program in the defense sector fail for something new. Now, mind you, he was the CEO. Maybe when he was a baby engineer, there was discovery. But at that stage of the game, his point was, we corporately know all the failure modes. These two young men may not know because they may not have been on our journey yet. But corporately, we know. And we don't lose defense programs because we can't do calculus and we can't do physics. We fail because we're making poor decisions like that program design canvas indicated. Or we're making, you know, high-risk assumptions that we forget to document and we forget to do something about between the time we send in the bid and the time the contract pops. So yeah, if for nothing else, the lessons learned sharing, it would be worth its weight in gold. And I think there's one more question and then I'll yield to my colleague. Ma'am.
This is a comment to support what the data model should be. That's close to my heart. AWS has something called a clean room, which is almost for the same purpose, that you can all come together, but you can preserve your data. I just want the audience to know that it's already happening. We are just not in touch with that yet.
Thank you very much for sharing that. We have a new VP of data science at BAE Systems, and he has been coaching me. I forgot the name of the closed area. I forgot it was called clean room. I should have remembered that. But yes, we're working with some AWS modeling to see if we can't approximate that. So thank you for sharing that with the whole team. It can be done, right? Okay. Any other questions? I yield to Professor Emeritus. Jim, thanks again for having me.